What's up, guys? Here at Airsoft Megastore, we love machine guns. They're huge platforms that can deliver a lot of range and great power, and they force you to play in a completely different style. So we decided that this week we would have a showdown between the A&K PKM versus A&K's Mark 46.
That's right, the SAW is one of the most ubiquitous machine guns, probably to most of us Americans, but we really wanted to see how it would verse a completely different machine gun with the PKM. It's got a longer barrel, it's a completely kind of different way that you hold the gun and the way that you use the gun in the battlefield. So we wanted to see how they performed against each other. So for today's test, we're going to be testing the rate of fire. We're also going to be looking at the variance, so the distance between the lowest and the highest FPS. We're also going to be looking at the FPS and the consistency of each gun. And then we're going to do an accuracy test at 40 yards to see the grouping of each of these guns. So let's go ahead and get into the results. Now for the first test, the FPS test, my SAW performed a little bit better. It came in with an average of about 446 to John's 429. So I had right around 15 to 14 FPS greater. That being said, his variance was smaller at 14 and mine was at 20. So this had a little bit higher variance, which means I could have a wider array of FPS.
Now, variance wasn't the only place where the PKM barely edged ahead of the SAW. We used 7.4 volt batteries with these, so we're leaning on the smaller side of this because we know that the bigger the voltage, the higher the rate of fire. I got 9.75 rounds per second, and Ross with his SAW got 9. So this gun shoots a little bit faster and has a slightly more consistent variance for your velocity.
Now for the accuracy test, we used 3.0 BBs and we shot at about 40 yards, and the wind was coming out of the south by southwest at about 6 miles per hour, and we wanted to see how effective we could be. So each gun fired 3 bursts of 3 seconds on the human-sized target, and we looked at the groupings. So let's get into the results.
Now, the longer barrel in this gun definitely seemed to account a little bit for a pretty tight grouping compared to the SAW. I was able to get, in my extremes, my furthest left to my furthest right was 20 inches apart, and my furthest north to my furthest south was 12.5 inches apart. Now that seems pretty wide, but when you look at the core grouping, it was much tighter. Now, my extreme variance was pretty wide. My core impacts were really tight. I had very few impacts that missed our torso size target, with an X variation of approximately 7 inches and a Y variation of 9.5 inches for my core grouping, all of which landed on the target. I was really impressed by this thing. The long barrel definitely contributed to this gun being an amazing way to reach out and suppress other players.
All right, now when it came to the SAW kind of surprised me a little bit in the actual variances. I did a little better with about 14 and 16 as my X variances and my Y variances. However, when it came to the core groupings, the SAW underperformed a little bit. I had about an 8 by 10 inch group for the core groupings, which means that I was not able to put as concentrated a fire onto my target. However, for having a much shorter barrel, I was pretty impressed. Now overall, we were pretty impressed with both of these machine guns. The SAW performed a little bit better in the FPS category. However, the PKM edged it out over accuracy. But the other discussion we have to have when talking about machine guns is weight.
Now, both of these guns are enormous in weight for airsoft, and they're pretty different in terms of actual weight because the PKM, as previously mentioned, is 16 pounds, while this is 11.5.
And the other thing that most people don't understand is that this is a much smaller gun in length than the PKM. So when you're talking about almost 12 pounds in weight, you're gonna get tired a little bit faster than the PKM because all of the weight is going to be right here close to your body. The PKM is a little bit more distributed and you don't feel it quite as much.
But the thing about the PKM is that this is an awkward platform to fire on the move and to shoulder. It's definitely designed for posting up in a comfortable spot and supporting players that are much more mobile than you. It's got the range, it's got the power, and it's got the accuracy, but it's definitely not for assaulting.
The SAW also shouldn't turn you away though. This is a great gun for anyone who's looking to have a nice small compact package with a ton of rounds. If you wanted to put any internal work into this bad boy, you could make this thing a monster of death. So be sure to check out both these guns at airsoftmegastore.com. Be sure to let us know in the comments below what kind of gun you would like to run. Would you prefer the longer PKM or the shorter SAW?
I mean, it does have a 5,000 round magazine.
So does this one.
2500.
Oh no.
Hi there! Welcome to Airsoft Megastore. Today we're going to talk about medium machine guns.
Actually, my son.
That's right. If you'd like to take a look at all the fine perusal of metal and bullets that we have here in the store, we're going to be taking a look at some quality guns.
With a full complement of M10 Picatinny rails, firing 5.56 light machine gun Mark 46.
Or maybe you're a fan of more Eastern medicine, so you want something like a PKM here that like my colleague John is holding. It has a nice 30 caliber round and guaranteed to destroy whatever is in front of you.
Your first step upon meeting a wound is to stop the bleeding and cauterize the impact. Ensure that there is no exit.
So be sure to stay tuned, keep your headphones dialed up, and we're going to continue on our little podcast here in just a minute.
Whoa, turbo.
He's hungry for life.